Hey there Metal Maniacs, welcome to another episode on Iron Whore TV. This is the episode of Album of the Week where I take a specific album, speak about it, delve deeper in its characteristics and its history. Stay tuned. Hey there fellow metalheads, welcome back to the Iron Whore channel. This is a channel where I speak about album reviews, gig reviews, festival reviews, anything to do with the cultural aspect also with regards to heavy metal you will find on this channel. So please consider subscribing and sharing our content so that we can reach more people and divulge again the word of heavy metal as much as possible. For this third episode of Album of the Week, I've decided to review an album which is a landmark album, an album that turned 51 years old on the 13th of February, because it was released on the 13th of February 1970, and I'm speaking about none other than the legendary album Black Sabbath by the legendary band Black Sabbath. This album is undoubtedly the birthplace of heavy metal. A lot of people have different opinions, but the majority, for sure, they adhere to the idea that this album was the first heavy metal album ever. Without this album, I firmly believe that the music history would have been much different. Quite possibly we wouldn't have bands who came after Black Sabbath with that heavier sound, heavier distortion that we nowadays know as heavy metal. Black Sabbath consisted of four musicians, namely Tony Iommi on guitars, Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, Terence Butler, known as Geezer, on bass, and Bill Ward on drums. Probably most of people who follow hard rock and heavy metal and follow Black Sabbath know about the story behind Tony Iommi and the accident he had on his last day of work, actually, where he cut off two of his middle fingers, two of the tips of his middle fingers. He thought at the time that basically his music career, which was just beginning, was practically over. But some people advised him to watch videos of Django Reinhardt, where he developed a technique where he started playing guitar with his first two fingers following an accident he had where he lost the use of the other fingers of his hand. And from then onwards, Tony used to make wax caps for his fingers in order to get a grip basically with the strings, and started using lighter string down-tune his guitar, and there is where the sound of Black Sabbath, the obscure, the heavy, the menacing sound of Black Sabbath emerged. As I said, this album turned 51 years old a few days ago on the 13th of February. It's a milestone in music history in general and not only heavy metal. This album was recorded only in a day, and some members after a number of years spoke about how they thought actually that a whole day to record an album was too long, whereas we now know that albums for a proper recording session will definitely take you more than a day. The band recorded this album basically as a live set, going through all the tracks with Ozzy Osbourne in a different booth doing the vocals. The band members feel that this kind of approach that they had in this first album really let loose their naivety at the time, their spontaneousness, and the final product is a result of that youthfulness, so to speak. And they really look positively on this aspect, and they don't really see it as a negative thing, the fact that they had to record the album only in one day, but rather as a positive aspect that helped them unleash their true emotions with this recording. Another interesting fact is the fact, excuse the play on words, that Tony Iommi, being a lefty, had to record most of this album on a right-handed Gibson SG. He used to turn it upside down and play it accordingly, so that's quite quite a feat as well in itself. This album was going to be released under the label of Fontana Records, but at the last minute the company decided to change the name of the record label and issue this album under another record label under the same company, which is Vertigo Records. Let's turn our attention now a bit on this cover art, which is also iconic in itself. It was shot in front of the Maple Durham watermill in the River Thames in Oxfordshire, England, by photographer Keith Macmillan, credited on the album as Keith. Keith was in charge of both the photography and the layout of the album, and standing in front of the watermill is a figure in black portrayed by model Louisa Livingston. The inner gatefold sleeve depicted an upside-down cross with a poem by Roger Brown. This inverted cross was mainly an idea of the record company, and the band say they were quite upset about this choice. They didn't know anything beforehand, before it was released. This imagery fueled allegations that the members in Black Sabbath were Satanists, participated in rituals and a lot of that stuff. This was fueled much more when at the US launch of the album there was a party which was hosted and preceded by Anton LaVey, who was the head of the Church of Satan. This idea that Black Sabbath were Satanists kept reverberating throughout the years, throughout the whole music community, and even beyond. An interesting story was when Black Sabbath came to play in Malta. My older friends tell me about the fact that there were prayer groups praying outside the venue and telling people not to attend. So that's how much the idea of Black Sabbath being Satanist was ingrained in the general discourse, basically. Upon release, this album ranked as number 8 on the UK charts and number 23 on the US Billboard 200. This was actually quite surprising at the time, considering Black Sabbath had a lot of negative reviews from music critics around, like they were a worse version of Cream or the bad side of counterculture, and notwithstanding all these critics, Black Sabbath reached at the time a very respectable positions on the music charts. The sound on this album combines jazz, blues, rock, fueled with a lot of distortion, and add all those ingredients together and you have the final output, which is heavy metal. Just listen to the opening track, which is the self-titled track Black Sabbath, with that menacing riff, and I can understand all the people that put the record and pushed play on their turntable at the time were surely taken aback about this heavy sound, this mysterious kind of sound with those vocals in the background. I mean, it was truly, for a youth especially, it was, I can understand it was truly frightening at the time. This is not to say that there weren't other bands at the time which were heavy, but Black Sabbath was probably the first band that really embraced that heaviness, that really embodied that heaviness and continued building tracks upon that heaviness, whereas other bands used to have a heavy track and then a lighter track and then a more bluesy track. It was a bit of a mixed pot, so to speak, but Black Sabbath really took the sound and made it theirs, and that's what makes Black Sabbath the first band which played heavy metal. Even the lyrics complemented the music. Let's not forget that we are speaking about a period where the hippie culture was in its full force. Make love, not war. And whereas Black Sabbath came forward with this occultist, dark imagery, they really stood out. And when you stand out, you're bound to get a lot of negative comments. And that's why the fact that they reach certain positions, as I said before, in the charts, make this album so innovative, so ahead of its time. Coming from Malta, we have also a very Catholic background as well, and therefore I can quite understand the fascination of Geezer Butler, especially, who wrote the lyrics, who wrote most of Black Sabbath's lyrics during their career, and it is known that he used to read a lot of occult pagan books from which he was being influenced from. In the end, it would be a kind of a disservice to go through each and every track over here, because this album is more than reviewing a single track per se, even though I mentioned the first track, which is one of the heaviest and one of the darkest Black Sabbath tracks ever made by them. But the greatness of this album is the idea behind it, the ability to think about something so ahead of its time and putting it into practice and putting it out there for the people, knowing the backlash that one might receive from taking such an approach. That is why this album will stand the test of time for years and decades to come, because it is truly one of those albums. As far as I'm concerned, it's the album for me. But obviously, if you ask me who your favorite band is, I would say Black Sabbath, even though I like a lot of heavy metal bands. But with regards to Black Sabbath, there are no comparison. Black Sabbath are the gods and everyone else is the mere mortals. That's how big the influence it has left, and it will leave and still leaves in all the musicians that grab a guitar or go play the drums. Black Sabbath is always an influence, and this album is the first album that comes to mind with regards to Black Sabbath. So that was an overview of this legendary album, which turned 51 years a few days ago. I hope you like the content. If you would like to add more facts about this album, some things which I didn't say, and be sure to include them in the comments below. That is why we make, as I always say, these videos, to be able to create a discussion. Also, if you have albums which you think I should review on this episode, please let us know also in the comment. I will be more than happy to speak about them, as long as they adhere to my concept of heavy metal, which is the old school metal style. When I say old school metal, I repeat myself, I'm not referring only to bands, for example, from the 80s or the 70s, but old school style is an approach. It can be a new band which has that old school style, which I really love. As usual, before ending this video, if you like this content, please subscribe, like, share on social media. It will really help us out to, again, spread the word of heavy metal as much as possible. That is all I have left. Until then, stay safe and metal on. Cheers.